Hi all, this is Madhushankar from University of Colombo. So today I'll be doing a quick quick walkthrough about the MVC architecture. So let's straight jump into the code base and understand what MVC stands for and what sort of things that we can accomplish by following the MVC architecture. So let's jump straight. Um, okay. Perfect. So, MVC, before we jump to the code base, let's talk what MVC is in a high level. So, it's called the model wave architecture, right? So, model, let me quickly do this. So let's say that we have the model. Let's talk what model is, in a while. And we have the wave, and then we have controller. So MVC. So model stands for, or model contains the business logic, of the application. So let's talk what business logic means in a while. And wave basically represents the UI components of the application, right? So whatever that the end user sees, basically is contained in Wave, and then control is sort of the intermediary part that caters the requests that coming from the Wave, and then fetches whatever that's required from the database side or the business logics through with the support of the model, and then it again brings back to the Wave through the controller. So if we just draw the communication parts over here, right? The Wave will be communicating both ways with the controller, and then vice versa. The controller too communicates with the Wave, both ways. And then model is the same thing again. So the controller um, communicates with the model, right? And then the model too communicates with the controller, right? So the end user, if we talk about the end user, will be staying over here. So this will be the PSU or whatever that is, where the requests are fetched in along with the required data. And in the other hand, we are the back end or the so if we talk about the two major parts, the back end and the front end, so we can talk that model is the back end part of the application, where the business logics and things like that is being functioned, and the front end part, where React and all those techniques comes into play, is the Wave part of it, whereas the basically the UI, right? So the database, DB, will be over here communicating with the model. So in this architecture, so what's not different. So key thing to keep in mind is, never there will be a communication happening straight, skipping the controller part straight between model and Wave. So there won't be anything like that. Any communication happening straight, skipping the controller between model and the Wave, right? So in a high level, that's how model Wave controller, how the messages or the requests pass through. So let's quickly go through the architecture itself and see in our application how we have defined all those things. And over here, I'm looking forward to take you all through the model and the model directory, the Wave, the controller, and there's something called the core. What's happening over there, the public init files, and the configurations, how it's happening, the routing, how it happens, and the entry point to the application, and whatever the dependencies that's in here. So we'll be covering all those areas in a high level, right? So MVC, we can call this file whatever the name that we need. So as the developers requirement prefer, we can name this file as we wish. So we can disregard the Git file. So this is in the Git right now, so that's why you have a Git file. We can just disregard that for the moment. And if you come here, so this is the main couple of folders that we can see, right? Which is the app file, app folder, or the app directory, and then the public directory, right? So vendor and compose.json, we can sort of forget, that's not part of MVC straight away, but it is something which is supporting our current application. I'll tell you what the application is and how it works as well in again in a high level, right? So let's jump into app directory. So again, we have a couple of areas over here, subdirectories, the controller, core, as I told, the models, view, right? So controllers, if we jump in, we have the home.php. So here, if we just go through, at a glance we can see that it's passing a couple of uh, parameters, right? Username and the email and things like that. So basically, over here, right, so it is the this is the home index, or as the main landing page, right? So here we haven't developed a landing page, right? Instead, as in no HTML, no things like that. This straight communicates in the URL level, so that's why you don't see any HTML components over here, right? But in a high level, what passes the okay, I'll take you to the um, I'll take you to the URL itself. So this is the URL, right? So you can see public home create Madhushankar, and we have the email address side. So this is the username and this is the email. So we are passing two parameters, right? So that's what you can find over here, right? The username and the email address, right? So being that said, let's jump. We will come to this point again, right? Let's go to core, right? So in core, we have two files over here, app.php and controller.php. So app.php, this handles the requests. So there could be slightly different um, methods that the developers use, right? So there could be so again it could differ based on the environments that we develop, based on other dependencies. The architecture might slightly differ, but in a high level, this is how the MVC works, is what I want to tell. So handles the routing requests and initializes the application, right? So that's what happens from the app dot app dot php file, which is in the core subdirectory, which is the directory coming from app, right? App folder. So controller, right, loads the specific models, as I told before. It loads the specific the view that the user needs based on the request, and loads the specific or the relevant model from the model libraries or the list of models. It will pick up the required model, and then when the other way around, or the other side of the path, it will fetch the relevant data or the business based on the business logic, and then it will pull up the required wave from the wave components, and then it will produce the required data to the end user. So we'll take example and talk about it in a moment. So if you go to the model, minimize this. If you go to the model, we have one simple model over here right now, and there is something called ORMs, right? Object relational mapping, right? So this is being used, highly used in database configuration. So it's easy to communicate with the DBs, right? So it could be Postgres, MySQL, MS SQL, right? And what said, what not, right? So while having a ORM in place, it's really easy to handle the code bases with less complexity, right? So here we use Illuminate, right? Eloquent. I don't know whether I pronounce it correct, right? So that is ORM, right? That's what we use to, fetch and feed data to the database. So in this case, we feed the username and the email address. And if I'm not mistaken, we are feeding the created date and the updated date as well, date and time, right? So that's what's happening in model, as I told. So this is the place that's communicating or communicating with the database, right? And let's go to waves. So waves, again, the structure might differ from to application based on the developer preferences and best practices that's being followed, right? So here we have wave and home folder. Within the home folder, we have index.php file, right? So here we are producing um, um, a static prompt saying hello, right? And whatever the parameter that's being passed from the URL, will be captured in the data name part, right? Okay. So I'll take you there as well. I'll do it right away. For example, over here, right? So this is the parameter that we're passing, right? Which is the name, right? So we can put whatever that we need. Let's say Ron, right? And then enter. It will say hello Ron. So hello comes from the static text that we mentioned over here, right? And then name is the parameter which is passing through the URL, right? So that's that. Let's jump into the next what we have, right? So it's the HT access. So through HT access, we can control the access that we want to give to the public, and basically access control. We can, in a high level, we can say HT access is used to. There are different other um, um, uses as well, but here one of the key uh, purposes of this HT access is to control the access, right? And another file that we have within the app directory is the database.php. So the database related configuration happens over here, right? So whether, right, what's the driver that we need to use? Again, as I told you, Progress, PG or MySQL, MS SQL, right? You name it, whatever the technology or the database is, the specified driver we need to specify there. And then host. So since this is a locally host, through example, we have the local host over here. If not, it could be any other. So let's say Azure or AWS, so Google, or wherever we can mention that particular basically it will be URL then, right? Along with the ports and all, right? And the database name itself. So when we go to the server, what is the specified database that we are trying to hit, or we are trying to retrieve data? And then the username, right? Whatever the username that's set up, and then the password. The username and the password means the username and the password that's required to log into the server, where the databases are stored. And this is the encryptions, right? Not that required for the demo, right? Yeah. So this is the way how you set up the ORM, right? So here we have set up the ORM, eloquent ORM, right? So that's the basic configuration of the ORM and the database. So if we jump to the next file, the init.php, init basically um, again loads the auto loads and the relevant. So when the application is triggered, then automatically the required what do you call the main features, right, or the initialization of the application is happening over here. So it triggers the .php file, dot controller, right, and database file. So these are things that should happen as and when the user interacts with the application. So it's ready, all right. It's like firing ready sort of a state. The user just have to enter the username or whatever, and then the results will be, right away. So this is sort of the loading part of the application. So it's with the init.php. Right. All right. So then we have the public directory. So again, I'll minimize the entire thing. Right. So if you see, just like the app mm, folder, we have another key folder which is the public. Right. So when the user comes and tries to basically put in the URL and hit enter in the browser, right? This is the first place that the user will come and hit. So basically the index.php folder, right? So here it will route the user to the necessary area. So for example, now you can see, right, we are using the app.php file or the function that is in core folder directory, right? So we are being pushed over there, right, or routed over there. And then in app.php file, there we can have the routing areas that's required, whether the user should be routed, whether this is a authorized user, not basically a new user or not. If that's the case, like which page to be prompt in the UI, which is not. So that routing part happens in the um app.php file. So and it loads the in .php as well, right? So that's what happens in the public. Again, if there's any what do you call JavaScript files, any CSS files and things like that, all will come, or images to say, right? Right. So all those will come in public folder, right? Which we can keep it as, which we can classify as public, will be here, right? And we have the vendor, right? So here, this is the configuration of the ORM again, right? And this brings whatever that's required for the um, Illuminate to work properly, right? The versions and the auto loading parts. So that's what's being configured over here, right? So we need this. So we need this, as in this is one approach, so one way of communicating our application with the database, right? Um, so that's what happens over here. So let's say, for example, right? So we have XAMPP running, MySQL and Apache running, and this is the database, right? So if we go to the code base again, right, and come to controllers home.php, right? So here we have the username and the email address, as I told, right? So this is the username and the email address, right? So let me show you what's in the database. So we have, so let me refresh. Let me run this again. We have 7 entries, right? We have duplicates. So in an ideal scenario, this can't be, there can't be any duplicates over here. This is redundancy, right? So we have to avoid it. But in this case, just to, show the approach, it's not a problem to, have duplicates. Right. So what you have to keep in mind is we have 7 entries over here. So if we come here, right, and then simply, hit enter, right, it will, just buffering. And then over here, if we refresh this, there should be an eighth record, as I told, an eighth record with the username and the email address. So let's change this for a moment. Let's say Ron, RON, and let's say Ron at example.com, and simple enter. This should pass the entry over to the database. So what's happening over here is, right? So as soon as the user comes to this particular URL, right? Or in this case, we can say we can just forget about this create. So this create is the method, right? Method and the parameters. So we can forget about the create part, create on create and the method and the parameters. Let's forget about it, right? If the home page is properly set up, right, there will be a form, a simple form saying enter the username, enter the email address, likewise, and then we have button to simply click on submit, register, whatever, right? Or save, right? So once that's being clicked, right? So this is the view part of the application, right? So once that's been clicked, then a request will be sent to the controller, right? Controller will check, okay, what sort of a request this is. And it will understand, okay, fine, this is a create request, right? Or the method is create. Okay, fine. Then if that's the case, what model, right? What component of the model should I, pull from the models directory, right? So it will pull that or trigger that model, right? So then what will happen? Okay, we have a new request, right? Which is an insert from the database's point of view, right? So it will say, okay, fine, we have a username called Ron, um, we have a email address called ron at dot com. We have to save that, right? So then the model will save that particular entry in the DB. So before that, there is validations and things like that also to discuss, right? Which I'm not planning to go in detail. So validation, there can be a couple of ways of doing the validation. It could be a validation coming from the database itself, a validation that's coming from the model or the business logics, right? Or a validation coming from the view itself, right? So it could be the text should be this length or with this particular characters or things like that. And if we are to check whether there is a duplicate user with the same username, right? So that's something that we need to check with the database itself, right? We have to send a request, check whether there is. So before the user saves the entry, right? We have to send one and then bring back the notification whether there is existing user with the said um, username, right? And then the other way is handled from the model itself, right? Instead going to the to the database, right, from the models layer, right? So where the business logic is, right? um, where the business logic is, right? So that's the create part of it, right? So let's say there's a page for logging in, right? So logging in, there could be a thing for the username and the password, and then a button to submit, right? So what happens? So this is the login page, right? So this is the view basically, right? And then we have the controller, and then we have the model. Right. So the user will come in and then put a username over here, put a password, and then hit on the submit or the login button. Right. So that's the request. Right. So that's a read request. Right. So let's not talk about the hashing functions and things like that. At this point, hashing, what happens in a high level, right? It compares, so once a plain text is hashed, there's no way of decoding it again, right? We can decode, but then it will, spit out a binary code, right? So what it will check, what's in the database in the password, entry, whether that hashed key or the hash password is equal to this. So is equal to this as in whether the binary values are equal. So it will say true or false. So if it is true, we can proceed further if the username is correct. If not, it will, be a unsuccessful login attempt. Right. So let's say that it is a successful login attempt, right? The um, the login request will go to the controller, right? And then the controller will pass the message, okay, fine, we have login request. Check whether there is a particular, specified user with this particular username and the password is correct or not. Then the model will check with the database, right? And then if it's a yes, then the controller will be, notified. And then if so, now the user is logged in, right? Before the wave is generated, at this point the user is logged in. And now based on whatever the business logic that we have provided, right, controller will decide um, ui what UI component to be loaded for the user, right? So then the through the app.php the routing happens, right? And then the necessary home page or the pop-up message or whatever will be spitted out. So in a high level, that's how it works, right? So I told let's talk about the business logic. So what business logic means? So business logic means, let's say, CRUD operation. We want to create, delete, read, and update an entry in a database, right? So then that information, that logics, right? If these particular logics are met, then we need to delete. If this is met, we need to create. If this is not, we need to update. If this is not, we need to whatever. So that logic, we can call it the business logic, right? So that business logic is stored in models, right? So there can be different ways that we can name the model. So within the directory, different files for the model functionality or the logics. And then with part, right? We can have one whole single PHP file, or whatever the language that we use to contain the login part, right? Or so it could be user creation, user profile update, user deletion if that's the case, user registration, login. So all these things we can bring it to a single login.php or whatever .php file, right? And then based on the request, right, based on the request, it will pull the necessary component, necessary UI component from the file and put it in the user interface or the UI. So that's how this works. And this is a very high level um, you know introduction about MVC and how this works. So there are different platforms, frameworks. For example, Laravel itself is a framework. If I'm not mistaken, we have Django, we have Flutter, and things like that. And we have Spring Boot for that matter, which is powered by basically Java developments. So yeah, many things to we have Mern, Mean. So these are frameworks and technologies that we use. And so this is a high level introduction about MVC architecture and a simple application that's built around it to do a quick demo for easy access, right? All right, then. Thank you so much. Thank you.